Hello, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough, and it figures that I talk about a movie I like with the Steven Universe movie last time, and now we have to talk about a bad movie. So I planned to do this as a commentary at first, because I haven't done that many commentaries this year, and I really wanted to do a commentary on a bad movie. The problem is, the copy of this movie that I watched wasn't downloadable, so I couldn't put it into editing software and record a commentary over it. So I'm just doing another Media Wiz vlog on it. I will eventually get back to doing commentaries because I really want to get back into doing that. But for now, let's talk about Fantastic Force, or whatever the hell it's called. Or, Freedom Force was the copy that I saw. It was listed as that. But this movie goes by a bunch of different titles. The main title in its original Spanish translation is The Illusionauts. And another copy it's sold as Fantastic Force, or as I Hate Everything called it, Fantastic Four-Orse. But the version I watched said Freedom Force, which, I mean, that's what they say in the cut of the movie. They say Operation Freedom Force. Okay, so the plot is, it's about a group of kids, a ragtag little team of young superheroes who are sent by the French government to go into a bunch of books written by Jules Verne, which a bad guy has tampered with, so that they can reset everything, so that the worlds of each book stay the same as in our world. Because apparently in this movie's universe, there's technology that enables you to go into books. Like, that is the whole premise of the movie. They have to go into books, just like, you know, just like the Da Boom Crew and the Ninja comic I looked at. Those were about going into video games, but this time they're going into literature. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. You got 5 Weeks in a Balloon, and From the Earth to the Moon. Those are the three books they went with. I gotta bring this up really quick. The only two celebrity voices are the only ones also listed in the actual, like, voice acting credits at the end. The only two people that are listed as voices are the two celebrities they were somehow able to rope in for the dub, and that was Christopher Lloyd, who's literally just labeled as the Professor. No confusion to Professor Utonium. And Sarah Michelle Gellar, who I previously talked about with the Scooby-Doo live-action movie. And say what you want, at least that movie wasn't this, because this movie's so much worse than that. And it also probably break your heart to let you know that Christopher Lloyd was also in Food Fight the same year this was released. But yeah, but they barely do anything. Out of all the characters, they barely do anything. And it's weird that they're the only ones listed in the credits. I guess they just wanted to highlight the fact that we got celebrities, and it's like, yeah, but they barely did anything the whole film. As for the four kids, and their meddling dog too, the four kids, one kid's named Aristotle, like the philosopher, and he's supposed to be I thought he was supposed to be like the cool one, because they give him that kind of like Flash Century, like, you know, spiky hair, and I'm like, oh, and at one point he's like, he drops the cliche joke of, oh, I have a video game just like this, I play video games. I'm like, oh, so he's gonna be like the kind of cool kid, but no, he's supposed to be the smart one. And then there's another kid who kind of looks like a knockoff Carl from Jimmy Neutron, and he's recruited because, oh, he has extensive knowledge about Jules Verne's books. It's like, okay, that at least makes sense. There's one kid named Profiterole, who, that's the name of, like, a pastry. I don't know why you would name your kid that, and I'll get to him. The only joke with this kid is the worst running gag in the whole film. And then you got Sarah Michelle Gellar as Nicole, and her whole thing is, she's recruited because she can do karate, and she's also love. Like, they're listing off, like, you represent this thing about Jules Verne, you represent this thing about Jules Verne, and they say, you represent love. I'm like, they gave her Matisse role. She's the heart. Oh my God, it's like, and also, I gotta bring this up. The really inappropriate content in this movie is on par with Sir Billy. Like, what is it with these terrible animated movies that, like, step over the edge and need to make, like, really inappropriate references in this family film? Like, you know how in Sir Billy they make references to, like, giant breasts, and there's, like, a bunch of sexual innuendos thrown all throughout? He says a whole thing about how he's in love with his cousin, just like how Jules Verne was, and they say, you know, oh, that was how it was back then. Trying to justify it, like, don't do that. And then the scientist says a whole thing about how he's in love with his baby cousin and how he gets off to her full diaper. Like, what? And that's what segues into the next thing, because all the fart jokes that are in this movie, there are a lot of fart jokes to the point where it's seriously the defining character trait of the other kid in the group. He was assigned to be part of the group because apparently Jules Verne had gas problems, and this kid cannot stop farting, and this is the one gag, the one defining character trait of this character in this film. It's just, it makes you wonder what, like, someone sat there and thought, okay, we gotta make character traits for each of these kids. That one kid, he exists to be the running fart joke in the movie. It seriously borders on, like, it makes you wonder, was this some kind of fetish film to someone? Did someone have a fetish while making this? Because it feels like, you know, I always make the joke of, oh, brought to you by some weirdos at DeviantArt in some of these videos, but it seriously does feel like it was made by, like, the weird fart fetish people on DeviantArt that made this movie. That's what it feels like, because of how many times they make this kid fart. Speaking of, that's another thing, another running gag that's hammered into the ground is that the villain maniacally laughs and then swallows a bug and then spits it out. They do it, like, a lot, and it's like, stop. It wasn't funny the first time. It's not gonna be funny the 50th time you do it, movie. But anyway, so yeah, they're teleported into each book to try and stop, you know, to hit reset buttons, because apparently Jules Verne was such a genius that he secretly placed reset buttons to fix his books. And yeah, they go into each story and they hit the reset button, and then they just, like, randomly teleport from one book to the next. It's like, are the stories fixed? Because we don't know. We don't see it. They don't show any of it. It's just like, oh, they're fixed. On to the next thing. This movie's supposed to be like a love letter to Jules Verne, and yet it feels more like an insult. Like, it really feels like they're just demeaning each of these stories and just ruining them. And there's a bunch of stuff from these stories that they just blatantly get wrong. There's stuff that's just not there. I like how at the beginning of the movie they're talking about, you know, International Literacy Day, which is a real thing, but it's not what they try to make it up to be. Like, they make it like, oh, it's a big festival where we celebrate reading. But no, it's about, like, politicians get together at the UN and talk about how they can better literacy rates around the world. It's like, this movie knows nothing. And that's another thing, just like I said with the inappropriate content, it makes you wonder, who is this movie for? Because I feel like this movie is way too stupid for kids. And there's no way an adult would watch it unless they were making a video to rip it apart. There's no, like, it makes you wonder, who is this for? And just like all these other knockoff movies, it feels like it's made for dumb grandparents to see it in a bargain bin, and they're like, you know, oh, this is animated, little Billy is going to love this, and then they get it, and then the kid watches it, and since they're a kid, they're like, oh, that's great, and then they grow up and they're like, Grandma, I hate you for getting me this. That's probably what this, that's the target audience for all these knockoff movies. Movies from these people, Video Brinquedo, Dingo Pictures, Phoenix Games, all those people. Sparkplug Entertainment, which I didn't make a video on, but I got my eye on some Sparkplug movies because I would love to do a video on one of those at some point. I guess I gotta talk about the company that released it. Not the company that made this movie, but the company that released it. Phase 4 Films, they basically specialize in taking movies and then re-releasing them. They usually take low-budget animated movies and then they re-release them under different titles. They've done this with another movie I can remember that they were part of. They did this with some animated movie called The Legend of Cirilla, and they re-released it as Frozen Land when Frozen first came out, so they were trying to capitalize on Frozen. And they did the same thing with this, and they re-released it as, sometimes they re-released it as Freedom Force, other times they re-released it as Fantastic Four Orse. This is like a whole other level of scummy. Like, it's one thing for Video Brinquedo, Dingo Pictures, all these guys to, like, just blatantly knock off movies and try to sell them to try and trick people. But it's another thing to take some crappy low-budget movie that had nothing to do with any of these movies they're trying to rip off, and then they just repackage it to try and trick people. That's like a whole other level. That's just straight up, it's like shovelware is what it is. It's like an even worse version of shovelware games for the video game industry, but instead it's for movies. I guess I gotta bring up how the movie ends. So the main bad guy who's been tampering with these Jules Verne books, who's sent his bad guy to follow the kids every time they go through a different story. The reason he tampered with Jules Verne books is because he is left-handed, and he is part of a left-handed conspiracy cult that are trying to make H.G. Wells the father of science fiction, even though a lot of people still credit H.G. Wells as like a master of sci-fi. But they're trying to make H.G. Wells the new face of sci-fi literature instead of Jules Verne because he was left-handed, and their leader is Eminem, which they don't say verbatim, but they, from their dialogue, their oh so subtle comedic dialogue. Our leader, who is conveniently named after a copyrighted candy treat. It's our leader M, and then covers his mouth. I'd love to know if the reason they didn't say that was because, oh, they didn't want to get sued by Eminem for using his name in slander. Because if Eminem found out about this movie and actually tried to sue them, that'd probably be the funniest thing. But it's like the fact that he cares so much about this stupid little piece of crap movie. But yeah, so they're trying to make it that Jules Verne, who was right-handed, is no longer the most popular science fiction writer. I don't know why, or why this even matters, or why did they go with this as the motivation? This is the stupidest thing ever. Like, everything else in this movie, it just feels like no one... I would love to know if someone actually genuinely sat there and was like, yes, this is going to be the plot, this is going to be the reason we do this thing, this is the reason that this kid has to fart a lot. I would love to know if that was the reason, because just part of me feels like this is a weird passion project for someone, but at the same time I feel like no one gave a crap while making this movie. They stop him because Sarah Michelle Gellar, whose character, I'm just gonna say it, she's basically like a knockoff Kim Possible. Like, she's the attractive girl who can do, spy action karate moves, and it's like, I could be watching, I'd rather just rewatch the 2 Kim Possible movies I reviewed again. I'd rather watch those, because those were good. But this movie sucks ass through a straw. But she like knocks him on his ass with some karate moves, and then and there was a giant octopus, which is a giant squid in the book, but a giant octopus starts attacking the city, and then they stop it, and kind of reminded me like they were trying to do like an Incredibles type of thing, like the first Incredibles with the Omni Droid. It's like, that's what it kind of reminded me of, but this movie sucks. I really don't. It was a chore to sit through this movie because it was long, and the final product is just, there's some laughably bad spots, but I would not recommend people watch this as a so bad it's funny movie. It's too boring and too stupid. And even if you laughed at the fat kid farting ironically, they do it way too much to the point where it's not even funny anymore. It's just so insulting. But and then they do like a little thing where the text at the bottom of the screen says like where everyone went on to do, and oh, I love it how the Profiterole, the kid that farts a lot, oh, he created the GAS, Gas Appreciation Society. Screw this movie. This movie sucks. Sir Billy was, I think, a little bit more insulting just because Sir Billy clearly was a passion project and the people behind that were, like, from what I heard, real scumbags. But this movie, it's just more confusing. It's like, I don't know who made this. I would love to know if this was a passion project or if this was just a lazy attempt to try and capitalize on, oh, kids like reading, kids like science fiction, kids like, witty dialogue, which we think we can do. It feels like I can't tell like the motivation behind why this movie was made. It really is just like, it's a baffler. It really is. Before I finish, I gotta bring up the sound editing and the animation quality I gotta talk about. The animation in this movie looks on par with that Tony Hawk animated movie that was on like TV a long time ago. What was that? It was, Boom Boom Sabotage. The animation looks like it's on par with that. It's that bad. It's better than some of the other knockoff movies that I've looked at. Like, it's better than Video Brinquedo, but that's not saying much, because Video Brinquedo movies look like they're like always never rendered properly. And this movie, the animation is just, the character designs aren't very good, and the weird thing is, it feels like there's times where they tried to implement, like, motion, like they tried to, like, implement shaky cam as if this is, like, a real movie, and it's like, why? Like, why are they adding, like, fake camera movements? That was just confusing. Sound editing in this movie, at least the copy I watched, there are times where it sounds like there should be sound effects, but there aren't sound effects. Like, there are fight scenes, and half the time there are no punch sound effects. There's a scene where a character's getting electrocuted, and they don't add, like, the static shock sound effect going through his body. It's like, Why are there no sound effects? There are audio drama YouTube channels that have way better sound editing than this movie. that goes to show there are channels that do audio dramas on a nothing budget, and they can do way better than this movie that's released on DVD that you can buy. And the music in this movie is really confusing. Like, they'll usually put really inappropriate big band jazz music in scenes, and you're like, why is that the music they went with? Like, that's really like inappropriate for the type of scene that they're doing. But regardless, yeah, this movie is dumb. This movie is really stupid. It's an insult to Jules Verne, a waste of time for the two celebrities they were somehow able to rope into this. This movie, don't watch it. It's not a family movie. It really isn't. The inappropriate content for kids, and it's just so stupid for adults. It's like, don't watch this movie. I would say I hated Sir Billy slightly more than this, just because Sir Billy was a passion project, and like I said, the people that were behind that were apparently major assholes. But this movie, it kind of cuts close. Like, I wouldn't say it's as bad, but it's definitely playing in the same ballpark. It definitely feels like it, at least to me. Yeah, Sir Billy, still one of the worst movies I've ever sat through. But this movie, while not as bad, don't watch this. Like, don't even try to like watch this ironically. It's not one of those so bad it's good movies. Like, Little Cars, I would say, is more of a so bad it's good movie than this even remotely comes close to. Yeah, screw this movie. The next Media Wiz review I'm doing is going to be on a song, and this was a requested episode. It's on a country song called Too Drunk to Karaoke. So yeah, this is finally gonna be going back to doing requested stuff, so I'm finally gonna get around to doing that. Until then, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough, and screw Freedom Force.